let's talk about those betting odds actually, and more so just those betting odds tell a good story because right now Max Holloway's a 7-1 favorite.
That's
Yair's like a 5.5 to 1 underdog or something like that. So this is the number 1 versus number 3 ranked guy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, it seems pretty clear that there's a lot of people sleeping on Yair Rodriguez and his chances here. But I want you to actually explain not just that, not just why these odds are maybe a little too in favor of Max, but also how did we get to this point? Where is Yair slipped up that has kind of allowed him to be such an underdog, and obviously where has Max excelled to do so?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of these underdog odds for Yair, I mean, this is going to be his first fight in 25 months. 2 years. He hasn't fought since October of 2019. And then that was all the dramatic shit that was going on with Jeremy Stephens. He won that fight via decision. Before that, they had the weird eye poke situation and it was a no contest and stuff. So, I mean, he's technically on a 3-fight unbeaten streak here with a win, a no contest, and a win. But there's just no momentum for Yair at all. It just doesn't feel that way whatsoever. Before this 3-fight unbeaten streak, he got absolutely smashed. But it was Frankie Edgar that beat on him up pretty bad. So, again, the guy's 13-2. I mean, he's a great talent. He's 8-1 in the UFC with the no contest. So incredible striker. We've seen the amazing things he's done. The knockout he had against Korean Zombie, I'll never forget it till the day I die because that's one of the wildest things I've ever seen in MMA history. But Max Holloway has all the momentum here, Noah, which is crazy because he's won in. He was on a stretch where he lost 3 of 4. Then he beat Calvin Kattar.
2-3 in his last 5.
Yeah. And but when he fought Calvin Kattar, he looked like the best fighter in the world because he put on an absolute clinic in that fight, one of the most one-sided scorecards you'll ever see for a 5-round bout. He looked like the best boxer in the UFC. He looked like the best striker in the UFC, and he damn so called for it during the fight by looking at the broadcast team and slipping punches from Calvin Kattar, one of the craziest things I've ever seen. So he's got all the momentum here. He's obviously a fan favorite. Yair, a fan favorite in terms of his fight style, but not a lot of people big on the guy in terms of outside of the cage, which is unfortunate. He's had the run-ins with the USADA thing and just long layoffs, fights falling out left and right. Guy can't catch a break. But he's back now. As Noah put as the title here, Time Stops for Nobody. You ain't shitting because he's, after 2 years off, they're throwing him to the wolves here with Max Holloway. But big implications on the line because if he can pull off the upset, he's knocking on the door of Alexander Volkanovski for a title shot.
How did you word that for Yair? You said he can't catch a break. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I find it interesting that this is the second guy who has kind of been just as much at fault for their own shortcomings, and you have said both times that they can't catch a break, but really it's their own doing, in my opinion. Here's the problem with Yair more so than Leon, because I know Leon, you got a whole soup of factors, just so Yair, okay. Inactivity has been his biggest problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his last win is over Jeremy Stephens.
Yeah.
And that was a good win at the time, but just look at what's happened to Jeremy Stephens since then. And I hate when people say that this is, I know you were just not when people say this. I hate when people like try to sneakily say like an unbeaten streak as if that's like a big credit when it's like, no, the reason you have to say unbeaten streak is because there's little no contest on there. It's not even really a fight. It's not a fight. That fight lasted like 40 seconds. Yair, I think, I poked Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy couldn't continue. That's one of the reasons people don't like Yair, or some people don't, because he did not act very friendly towards Jeremy for that. And it was very weird. But they kind of made amends after that. They had a second fight. Yair kind of said more so as just heat of the moment. But then, yes, you do have the USADA issues. There was that whole incident where UFC were trying for basically a whole year to book him and Zabit. And it seemed like Yair just didn't really have much interest in fighting Zabit or much want to. UFC actually released him for a couple days, brought him back, and then the fight still never took place.
Yeah.
So it's been a weird run for Yair, but he's had a lot. He's had a lot of potential for a long time. He's just never quite reached it. And inactivity has been the biggest reason for that.
Yeah.
And this actually, what I like about this headline, "Time Stops for Nobody," is it relates to both guys. Because in the reverse end, Max Holloway has been a much more active fighter. But the reason why he's even taking this fight is because if he were to, you look at the Leon Edwards and Carlos Esparza debacles they found themselves in, Max Holloway should have been able to fight for a title after beating Calvin Kattar.
Yeah.
But you see what happens. The Volkanovski-Ortega fight was supposed to happen 2 months later, gets pushed off to October because they coached the Ultimate Fighter and all that. So then all of a sudden, Max is like, well, I guess I got to fight again.
Yeah.
And again, he could have said, no, I've earned it and I'm going to wait. But UFC typically, that would have given a chance for someone like the Korean Zombie or Giga Chikadze or anyone to make a huge statement and pass him up for a title shot. That's just the reality.
Yeah, and now he's staying active.
So now you get yourself in this fight. And obviously Max is coming off of one of the single greatest performances in a fight that you'll ever see. I mean, it's a masterclass performance. But if any, I think it might be cloudy. I think people are emphasizing it maybe a little too much. I mean, he's looked great even on the, he's 2-3 in his last 5, but none of his losses he's looked like bad in. I mean, 2 losses to Volkanovski, and he had the loss to Dustin Poirier where he moved up to lightweight. So pretty high competition. Those wins in that time being Calvin Kattar and Frankie Edgar. That was Frankie Edgar when he was still had a chin on him, My thing here is I think we're going to get a pretty exciting striking matchup. Yair is much faster. His style is much more. There's much more movement involved than with Max. Max is heavy on the punches. He's going to have that heavy boxing style. He's going to look to cut off the cage. Going to look to walk down Yair. We don't see a ton of leg kicks from Max, but that could probably be to his benefit if he used them here to try to slow down some of that movement. And the thing with Yair is, even for a guy like Max, guy that's never been dropped in his UFC career, let alone stopped.
Crazy.
But you look at a guy who was also known for their chin and the Korean Zombie, Yair's so wild, so unique that he just ducks a punch and throws an elbow upwards and all of a sudden fight over.
Yeah.
So Max does have to be careful for these kind of things. I don't think he can get away with what he got away with in that Calvin Kattar fight. He can't look at the broadcast team and start talking to them while ducking and bobbing and weaving punches and all that. Not probably going to be to his benefit here because Yair throws a lot of spinning attacks. There's a lot of flying attacks. He's going to look to make this at least I would assume, a fight more on his terms, something a bit more flashy, a bit more exciting. Max going to look to slow it down that movement, and look to just hammer him with 1-2s.
Ease him up. Yep.
And, Yair, outside of the Frankie Edgar fight, has really done a good job of not being hit. Frankie did such a good job of ground and pounding him, really.
Yeah.
He was just able to take him down at will and just pummel his face with the ground and pound with elbows and everything else. But in terms of on the feet, sure, some guys have given Yair good fights. Alex Caceres gave him a good fight back in the day. I remember Yair has a win over Dan Hooker.
Obviously Korean Zombie.
Yes, correct. But even in like the Korean Zombie fight, Korean Zombie was winning that fight before he got knocked out. I mean, I don't know what the scorecard said, but he got knocked out with 1 second left in the 5th round, if that tells you anything. So
fucking nuts.
It looked like the Zombie was on his way to a decision victory, but that was still a fight where, both guys, it was an awesome fight.
Yeah.
But not one where I would say, like, Yair wasn't necessarily getting wobbled, wasn't getting, he definitely took some damage, but he kind of ate it a little bit. Both guys did, and that's what made that fight so awesome, was they were landing some really hard shots. So I'll be curious to see if this turns into that kind of fight, how much can Yair kind of withstand of Max's shots? You know, if it really gets into the later rounds, is Yair going to wear down? And once he has to slow down a little bit, if he has to start eating some punches, is he going to be able to weather it and land some of his own? Or is that power, is that precision of Max Holloway going to be too much for him? And we might even see a stoppage here.
Yeah, this is one of those fights where I don't see this ending soon. I think this is going to be a war. I think it's going to be drawn out. We're going to go into those championship rounds. We're going to find out who can dig deep. And we've seen them both do it. We've seen them both get these wins over prolonged fights with 5 rounds. Can they do it against each other here? 2 of the best strikers in this division, undoubtedly, but in different ways. This is a fantastic matchup.
There's no doubt that this fight is a number 1 contender bout, but
right,
that seems to hold true for Yair, especially because, you know, he seems to be pretty clearly focused on this division. But I'm curious and this might be more of a discussion for Monday, but if Max Holloway wins, we all just assumed that the third fight with Volkanovski would be what he wants. But is there a chance that he's looking to impress anybody else for a potential high-profile bout that's not for the title next, Dominic?
Yeah, from what we've been seeing on Twitter and even in his media scrum on Wednesday, Max clearly has a lot of options. He's saying the UFC has just been throwing options at him, and they're evaluating which ones they want to do. He's been talking back and forth with Conor McGregor, which I think we talked about on Monday. There's history there, obviously, between those two and what they've done since they fought each other years and years ago. We've obviously seen him test the waters already at lightweight for an interim belt against Dustin Poirier, who's fighting for a championship in December. Max is a guy that's always going to have options because he's a fan favorite, and he puts on showcases when he's in the cage, win or lose. He's going to have a plethora of options, I believe, but number 1 on that docket will be that third championship fight with Volk.
I don't know.
But we'll see Monday, I guess.
Part of me could see him using this win, if he were to win, to potentially catapult him into something different. I don't know. Because, again, technically Volkanovski's beat him twice. Don't get me wrong. I know how we feel about the second fight. And I would love to see that fight run a third time. But at the same time, it's like, if Max wins, do you do it a 4th time? Do you do it a 5th time?
Right.
Right. There's a lot of – I could see the UFC maybe trying to give him other options in hopes that maybe he would want to pivot and maybe fight. I don't know if Conor McGregor is necessarily the option, but is there a chance that he might be able to go up to lightweight and take on, you know, let's say Charles Oliveira if he lost to Dustin? Is there a chance that an Oliveira fight at lightweight, you know, he does have a win technically over Oliveira, even though the circumstances are a bit cloudy on that one.
Yeah.
All in all, I think there might be, as much as I want to believe this is just a number 1 contender fight, I don't know if that's going to hold true for Max, but for Yair, kind of crazy that this guy's been so inactive for the last few years. I think he's only fought, it's only 4 times since 2017 or 2018, one of the two. Either way, it's a long gap in activity. And we haven't seen him since 2019, so if that tells you anything. And for him to come in here after not fighting in 2 years and get the number 1 guy in the division, while I understand that's an uphill battle, if he passes, if he makes it to the top, if he wins, all of a sudden he's in the driver's seat.
Yeah. And he kind of will put himself right back where when he first came into the UFC where he was with all that hype and momentum. It's a big opportunity.